Hi, everyone. Hi, Sean.
Hi there.
How are you? This is Sheila Morrow. I'm coming to you from Western Massachusetts, and I am with Maryellen here. She's going to be on in a second. There's Maryellen. And Sean Sweeney is joining us from the Boston area. So thank you so much, Sean, for doing this with us today.
Thanks for having me.
We are super excited. Yes. So I just want to start with a couple of things. I know, let's see. I want to make sure. Let me see. Okay. I just want to go over a couple things. Just I'll let kind of Sean and Maryellen talk about the webinar itself. Let me just hold on one second. I just want to make sure I am okay. Hold on one second. I just want to make sure everyone is on here. Okay. All right. Okay, great. Okay, I just want to make sure everyone's on there, and I see everyone is on there. Okay, so I'm going to go back to. So, today we are so glad to have Sean with us. We have been working with Sean and friends with Sean for, I don't even know. Sean, when did you start using Story Grammar Marker?
Oh, like 1998, 1997. But then I started having conversations with you and Maryellen at ASHA conventions some years later, and that's how we connected.
Yeah, and you were one of what we consider to be an early adopter of the Story Grammar Marker, and Sean has been writing. Yeah, absolutely. Sean's been writing our technology blog for about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years at this point.
Yep.
And so, which has been awesome. And if you haven't checked those out, if you visit our blog and you search tech or technology or Sean Sweeney, you'll see all of those come up, which should be really great because there's tons of wonderful information that you can use to follow up from what you're going to learn today. I just want to move quickly through. So this will be a quick introduction, and then Maryellen will come and do a little short overview of the icons and the approach of Story Grammar Marker and the expository areas. And then Sean is going to have the bulk of the time to talk about technology and telepractice. And then finally, we will give you the link to the certificate of completion. We will raffle off a prize, and we will give you the link to the handout so you have that information. I just want to make sure that, your other applications are closed on your computer. Just let you know that the chat panel on the right allows you to ask questions. They'll do their best to respond at the end. And then at the end of the webinar, we are going to be raffling off a quick start. It's either going to be an SGM quick start, a Brady quick start, or a ThemeMaker quick start, whichever one the winner chooses. And you will also get with it a set of digital icons, and the value of that is $19.95. So that's exciting. I have one poll. I just want you to write in the chat on the side here. If you can write what your ideal topic for the next webinar would be. And if you it just doesn't have to be a long thing, just a brief, kind of just something that you're really interested in learning more about, and you would love us to do a free webinar on it. So that is the poll question. And if you can just respond by typing it in, that would be great. And now I am going to have Maryellen get started.
Thank you, Sheila and Sean, for setting all this up for me today. So we're going to, I'm just going to talk a maximum of 10 minutes about the Story Grammar Marker and our approach at MindWing to narrative and expository and conversational discourse. And I like to show this beginning slide because we're going to be talking about icons, and the icons trigger the parts of a story for the child as he or she is progressing. But that's not the deepest part. The next level down would be the stages of narrative development. I kind of just like to figure out that kids go through these stages, not as hard and fast stages, but they're areas like temporal sequencing, cause effect, problem solving. And there are, of course, narrative and expository text structures that are very, very common in the schools, and you'll see them both there. At the deepest level is the critical thinking triangle, and I'm going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. The story grammar marker icons are up here, the character. For those of you who are joining us who are kind of new, the setting is much more than a time and a place. That's a star. The initiating event or the kickoff, it doesn't have to be a problem, but it certainly can be, and we know we've had a big problem recently. The internal response, which is the classiest part, I call it, of the story grammar marker, because it's right there to have the child think about or internalize or whatever the feelings. The thinking verbs, the plan is a hand, stop, think, and make a plan. The actions that the character does to carry out the plan. The tie up at the end, which would be termed the direct consequence, but it's a bow, so it ties up the story grammar marker and it ties up the story or the episode. And then the resolution at the end, the character's feelings is sort of like a reflection. The lesson learned, the moral. So the critical thinking triangle, I love to use with novels and short stories as children progress, because these are the areas of the main idea and the theme of the story. So we start with the kickoff, which could be a trouble, a challenge, or a problem, or something exciting. We think about the feelings and the social emotions, because certainly when children are socially problem solving, they're thinking about kickoffs and feelings. They're thinking about their mental state, what they know for a fact, what they remember from the past, and what they realize, things like that. The plan is when there's a decision made or an intent to do something. All of these are connected by cohesive ties, the conjunctions that are very, very important and that we teach via the stages. So, and, but, so, because, those kinds of things. First, next, after that, then, and finally. So they help us to work on sentences as we're working on discourse development. This is just an idea of what the critical thinking triangle assists you with, and I won't go through them all because you'll be able to look at it at your leisure, but the concept of theory of mind, of getting into the head of another character, social problem solving I mentioned, conflict resolution, where there might be one kickoff, but several feelings, and certainly we know that now. Why is the yarn braided? I wanted to mention that. The braids represent the strands of oral language, and this is an oral language tool. And of course, oral language is the foundation of literacy. So these are the aspects that you can work on as you're working on discourse, which is the icon aspect of the story grammar marker. We can work on pragmatics. We can do phonological awareness. We can certainly teach vocabulary and description, things like that. Syntax and morphology, expanding our sentences, the noun phrase and the verb phrase, the EDs, the INGs, all of those types of things, and do them within the realm of discourse. So using a story, we use quality children's literature, or listen to children telling their own stories. So this is a graphic of the building blocks of oral language at the bottom. and how they lead to literacy at the top. So there's the pragmatics, phonology, semantics, syntax, all could be incorporated into discourse. And these are the 3 text structures that we're really going to talk about today. Without discourse, there's not a really great connection with literacy, because our words and our syntax has to be put in some kind of an order. These are the 2 big pictures that Sean's going to be talking about, mainly the icons and how to use them with distance learning. You'll see on the left is the complete episode for a story. It's also part of information text at the problem solution area, because we have people in life handling problems and solutions. These 2 slides that I'm going to show now are just kind of a synopsis of the methodology. And I originally did these for Orange County in Florida. And that's why there's a water analogy. It goes from shallow water, beginning at the upper left-hand corner, and progressing to the right clockwise to the deepest water of argument. And it shows the developmental sequence and how children at the very beginning are focusing on characters, settings, and actions. And also they'd be able to do a list and a sequence in expository text in that shallow water area. But then as we progress, they develop the kickoff, which is the causal chain. Then they get deeper into problem identification and problem solving. And then lo and behold, there's probably 2 points of view on the problem, or many, many points of view on the problem, which would be in the area of argument. So children progress in their own time through these stages. This is the back of that chart that I just mentioned, and it shows the stages of narrative, and it also shows the text structures of information text. The right side shows how they could be blended for therapy. And I thought you'd like to see that and maybe look at that in closer detail. So this is time to go over to Sean.
Okay.
And I hope I stayed in my 10-minute
I think you did great.
area. Thanks, Sean.
I'll try to stay in my 45-minute area.
Yes, and Sean, and I, if people don't know, Maryellen and I are mother and daughter, which I don't know if everybody knows that sometimes, and so we're not being we're still socially
supposed to be together. Yeah,
we're supposed to be together, so we're not going against the social distance rules. So Sean, are you able to?
Yeah, I think if I do, I should just go over to share my screen.
Yeah.
And then do you have to make me you already made me a host.
I did.
So just double check here and see. I'll try this and then just see what people see. But I think they still see you. They still see.
Yeah, they do still see us. So I'm just gonna do this.
Okay, that's fine. They don't necessarily need to see me if they see the desktop. That's cool.
Yeah, and
okay.
then I can see you, so.
Yeah, no, that is totally fine.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll go over to presentation mode. Thanks everyone for your patience with us, because things have happened really fast in the world, and we're doing our best to convey information to people. And for me, part of my story is, I guess I could start with that. I was at an IEP meeting on Friday the 13th. That seems kind of interesting now, when at the school they announced that the school would be closed for 2 weeks due to the coronavirus, and we've kind of gone from there. I work at a private practice called the Ely Center in Needham, Mass, and we do social communication groups and language therapy and executive function work, and I work with preschool through adult clients, and use the story grammar marker quite regularly particularly with my elementary and middle and into high school a bit as well with those clients. So that kind of course, dominoed to us and what are we going to do with our practice. And we of course needed to close as well and make a pretty rapid transition to figuring out how to continue to support our students and families who are socially fragile. We bring them together in groups, and we have transitioned to in the past 2 weeks be able to put those groups into a telepractice format, and about 90% of our clientele still participating in groups. So that's been a lot of work, but really gratifying. And figuring out how to become telepractitioners as a staff. And I had a little bit of an advantage here because I've been an SLP for 20 years. And for about the last 11 or 12, I've also been an instructional tech specialist. So that isn't exactly, the same as a telepractitioner, but a lot of what you learn in becoming an instructional tech specialist can be very serviceable in telepractice. So, in fact, I've done a lot of presenting on telepractice, particularly with some folks up in down East Maine at Waldo County General Hospital. Michael Toohey started a program there, and he's done a lot of presentations on telepractice and trained people from across the country up there in Maine. And Nathan Curtis and Amy Reed are two of their clinicians, and we've presented at ASHA about 3 times. So I liked to say before, that I'm not a telepractitioner, but I play one on TV. Well, 2 weeks after these events, since the 13th, now I can say I'm a telepractitioner because I was thrown into that pool real quick, and it's going pretty well. My goal in this, and I'm not going to necessarily be able to look at the chat, respond to the chat as I'm talking because I'm going to be presenting, but Sheila, maybe you can take a look and maybe highlight some of the questions that seem most important at stopping points or towards the end.
Yeah, I'll do that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that'd be cool. I can't do that and talk at the same time. I had a group yesterday where I found that chat and Zoom sessions with students can be either helpful or completely, a destructive mess. And in one group, I have used the chat to kind of give a quick reminder, like, remember not to give the middle finger to the camera. That actually was a reminder that I needed to give for someone who just really likes to see himself giving the middle finger. There's no real malice behind it, but and also, good job keeping your body still. And with another group that was just misusing chat, I just shut it off after giving them a warning. So my goal here is to talk with you about how I've used Story Grammar Marker digitally through my career as doing more in-person therapy, and how it can translate to the telepractice environment, particularly now. And you can chime in, Sheila, on exactly where this is, but there's a downloadable icon file from your website that for purchase now for not very much money, where people can obtain the icons and use the icons.
Yeah, we'll show that we'll show the link at the end, but it's on our homepage. There's a button that says distance learning. So it's super simple to find it. And we'll show that again at the end. Thanks, Sean, for mentioning that, because I know people, that's important for people to be able to find.
Right, so this is going to be, those icons are going to be available to you. Sheila and I have had conversations for a long time about the benefits of having the icons available digitally, and what people could do with that in terms of making their own visuals and putting them on smart boards and things like that. And I know a lot of what you've grappled with is that, you have a graphic designer who created these, who you need to pay, and they're trademarked. images.
Mhm.
So you've needed to kind of figure out how to put that out there. What would be a reasonable, fair price that protects you as a company, protects your graphic designer and things like that. So now they're out there. So that's great.
Right, right. And I know people are asking questions about that, and I will at the very end, when we talk a little bit more about like the legalities of using these, I have had a lot of questions, and I will do my best to answer those after Sean finishes with this part. So thank you for asking those questions, and thanks, Sean, for mentioning that part too.
Cool. All right, so one of my main points here, and we're going to get into seeing a lot of kind of what to and also a little bit of how to. I don't have a ton of time, so but I'll try to refer to some transferable skills from situation to situation or context to context that you can use, so that you have the technical tools to be able to do this, but it's all pretty easy. But one thing to know is that there's many ways to do the same kind of thing, okay, in terms of using images in teletherapy and creating a kind of teletherapy material to use. And today is not really going to be about kind of the getting started with teletherapy. We don't really have time to cover that. I would refer people, if you have time in the next few days and you have not viewed the SLP Telecon conference, which is available free online. They have a number of getting started webinars that are free and discuss platform and HIPAA and lots of getting started sort of topics. But we're really talking about creating materials to use. And one of the key things you can be looking for if you got questions about getting started is doing what we're doing here, which is screen sharing. And Zoom as a platform allows you to screen share, and Google Meet allows you to screen share. And some platforms allow you to do what's called remote control, which means you're giving the cursor to the student on the other side and they can click and make things happen. And some platforms don't allow that. But just think about features. And that's an important consideration. As if you understand a feature, it doesn't matter what platform you're using. And if you understand the idea, I want to make a material that does this, you probably are going to have multiple options for doing that as well. All right, so you choose your methods in doing this. So I mentioned that one new available product on the MindWing website is the icons that can be purchased, and this really just extends the use of the MindWing icons and methodology into a digital format that's very useful for teletherapy. A few different ways you can use the icons. I'm going to show this. I'm going to demonstrate this with a few different applications. One is, creating your own graphic organizers. You can insert the icons into a word processor. Okay, so by word processor, we're talking about Microsoft Word. We're also talking about Google Docs. It works much the same way in either of those applications. And we could call Google Docs an application as well, even though it's a web-based tool. And you can choose which is going to be better for you. One of my favorite things to do is to use the icons within presentation creators. So using PowerPoint or Google Slides. One of the things we have to be aware of in our transition to teletherapy is to try to avoid becoming a talking head. So we don't want to transfer this into being, tele-lecturers. But having the icons present in either of these formats can allow us to visually scaffold narrative language, expository language from students, so that the icons are things that we're scaffolding around. So by talking about presentation creators, I'm just talking about that being a blank space that might be your preferred blank space, not in the Taylor Swift sense, but just a workspace. And it tends to be my favorite place because in PowerPoint and Google Slides, when you put images into them, you have a lot more mobility. You can move them around, where a word processor is always wanting to create a paragraph, and that makes that a little bit harder. Presentation creators also allow you some ability to give students the ability to take the cursor and move stuff around. So there's some possibilities for interactivity there. So I'm going to stop sharing there and instead share my desktop so I can move. I didn't mean to do that. So, 1 second. I'm going to share my desktop so I can move some stuff around and you can see it. All right. So I'm first going to show you what we're talking about here in the icon set that is now available. In the icon set, there are details here. I saw some of the questions about licensing and could you download it for use on multiple computers, and you can review that here, which is detailed there. The spirit of using these icons, I'm sure Maryellen and Sheila would say, it will be allowable for you to use these within Google Drive. So as long as you're not disseminating that Google Drive file to many people outside of your own students who would be able to use and see those, obviously. You're not publishing materials with these on Teachers Pay Teachers, etc. Okay, that's what you want to avoid. But putting it in your own Google Drive so that it can be used for you functionally in that password protected web space is something that is within the bounds of this license and is reasonable. I'm actually viewing the file. It's a downloadable PowerPoint file. I'm here on a Mac, so I've got it in Keynote. But the principles remain the same, that these are just images that are in a PowerPoint file for you. And so the only technical thing you need to know about using these is how to copy and paste. All right. So if you click on any of these icons, you can copy it. You can do that by edit, copy, or I like to use keyboard shortcuts, which are different on a Mac versus a PC. On a Mac, it would be Command C. On a PC, it would be Control C. But by doing that, I just copied the character icon. I can even copy multiple ones because if I want to take more than one icon, I can double select. So double selecting on a Mac is Command click. So I've selected both the character and setting. And then now I'm going to copy again because I need to replace what I just did. So I have a few different options. Remember, I talked to you about word processing as one of the things that you could consider using. I'm going to open up Pages for you here, which is the Mac version of Word. Okay. I don't want an update on it though right now. All right. We'll say cancel. We'll do new. And a blank document. All right. And by pasting those in, I've now got the character and the setting, which are going to be writable. All right, but using these in a word processor is a little bit harder, as you see. Moving them around sometimes can be a little funky, and then figuring out where the cursor is, because now I can write in the character up here. And you can get into all the things of formatting and so forth. And I can go down here or use the return button to go all the way around the character and go down to setting. Okay, so that's one of the things that you could consider, I might want to do that with a presentation creator instead. But basically play around so you get comfortable with how to use these. They're all going to be resizable, which will make everything that I did there make a lot more sense. Okay, now in terms of the applications or tools that you might be interested in using, Pages or Word are not the only things that you can use. I need to just exit this. Because we all, or many of us, also have access to Google Drive. So Google Drive is just one way we could refer to Google Apps, which are also sometimes referred to as G Suite. Okay, so it's the suite of productivity tools that includes Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Drawings, Google Sheets, and all of those particular tools. But going into Google Drive, one way to create a Google document is to go Google Docs like this. New Google Docs brings us to a new word process document, and my icons that are still, hold on, let that load. Are still on the clipboard. So clipboard, we didn't need them twice. When you copy something, it goes to what's called the clipboard, and then they're still available here. Okay, so you may discover that you want to do this in Docs, and Docs would let you create your own graphic organizers if you would like, and you can type around them, and we can write about the character and setting based on having put these visual supports into a word processing document. Okay. However, you might be interested in doing this in different ways than what I showed you. Going here to next and looking a little bit more at Google Slides, and I can show you just how to set this up. I like Google Slides so much more for this kind of instruction, because in Google Slides, you can move the icons around much more freely. You can play with text much more freely. This is simply doing the exact same thing that I just showed you, but into a Google slide, or pasting the icons into a Google slide. You could do the same thing with PowerPoint. You could do the same thing with Keynote if you have a Mac. And through all of this, you might be doing screen share to show students, the material so you can work with it. And one of the things I love about Google Slides is the ability to use shapes, which adds some color to what's going on in your presentation. So that's always engaging. And when you insert a shape, it's typable, all right? So you can make graphic organizers really easily and quickly and have a place to type. In teletherapy, you might be talking about just providing the icons, and we're going to talk about this context, a little video clip I showed you. In this case, what you see here is a story analysis at the complete episode level of a Lego Indiana Jones wordless video clip. I've been doing some Indiana Jones work with a group as sort of a theme. They really like watching the clips and talking about them. And you can find this on YouTube. If you look up Lego Indiana Jones, there's a bunch of them that you can check out. In this one, young Indiana Jones and his friend were in the desert and they were exploring when they saw someone taking an artifact. If you've seen Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the opening that had River Phoenix playing Indiana Jones as a young Indiana Jones, that basically is what is in this clip. And it was pretty cool because my students had already had some exposure to the Lego version of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And in this case, I had to kind of give them a lot of hints toward the inference that the Boy Scout in the clip was actually Indiana Jones. I did all this typing based on what the students said. So again, you want to avoid lecturing, but use this more as a scaffolding tool and a visual. So just so you can see that, let's take a look at how much easier it is to do it in a Google Slides presentation. So I'm actually just going to insert in here a blank slide. I won't worry about it being a background. That's cool. All right, and still on my clipboard, I believe, are those two. Now, for some reason, it inserted them as one icon. So I like to mess up in front of you so that you can see that, hey, sometimes we just have to check things out and redo them and proceed calmly instead. So instead, I just copied my character icon there, okay? So I'm going to do this as just the character icon so you can see how easy it is to create any kind of graphic organizer that you might want. You could take all of the icons and create basically the braid here, or you could do a character analysis. And if you look at MindWing's digital resources, a lot of their graphic organizers or some of their character graphic organizers are around traits like physical appearance, likes and dislikes, and so forth. But to create your own graphic organizer, you can just go here to shapes. Remember I said shapes were super useful. Also notice how much easier it was for me to move that icon around, and how that made that, it gave me a lot more freedom than in a word processor. And you can go shapes, and you can pick whatever shape you would like. I'm just going to pick a rectangle, click and drag it out. Okay. And the cool thing about shapes here is that I don't now need to go insert a text box over the shape. Instead, I can just double click in the shape and it's going to be typable. All right. So if we're talking about Indiana Jones, who is he? He's an archaeologist. He's, I misspelled that. Let's not worry about it. He's a scientist, really. But he's also kind of an adventurer and so forth. So if you want to do traits, if you want to do physical experience, likes and dislikes, values, pretty much everything. Indiana Jones, you know, it's frequently shown that he wants everything to be put in a museum. So that's like one of his values, that anything from the past is valuable and it's meant to be shared with others. So this is one reason why creating a space to work in a presentation creator, such as Google Slides, such as PowerPoint, is going to be maybe more useful to you than the word processor. But like I said, you pick and choose. What can make this interactive in some different ways is if you choose a platform that allows remote control, I could give the student control and the student could continue typing. All right. Because if you're giving remote control, that includes the mouse and the keyboard. So they can click in the space, decide where to type, and they can take over and type. But if you're working in a district that has Google Apps widely available, you also could simply share it to the student and make it editable. All right. And then they would be able to edit the same thing without you going through the more technical aspect of giving them remote control. So those are some things that you could consider. There are many ways to do things, but I've spent a number of hours with a high school student recently just co-writing in Google Documents, and I didn't need to even screen share for that purpose. He just shared with me his document, or I created a document to share with him, and we're both editing the same document. Another thing that you could look at around icons is there's aspects of doing this in Google Slides that would make it more interactive. So if you have the icons available on a slide, students could click and drag the icon. If I do this, this is an image. Could click and drag the icon and move it onto character, click and drag the setting as they talk about setting and move it onto the block that says setting. Click and drag the kickoff and move it over here. And you could additionally add text to each of those shapes as a way to make a narrative unfold. I'm going to talk about some sources of narrative as well for you to consider, because you know context is important. What I was mentioning about Google Drive is if you've downloaded this set, it can live in your PowerPoint. You also can upload it so that it's in your Google Drive, and you can paste images from Google Slide to Google Slide as well. So if you're working on making a Google Slides kind of presentation, you can do that. So just showing you a little bit more in real life what I was just showing you there. Things don't have to be massively interactive in Telepractice. They can be fairly minimally interactive, or the interaction is just really your verbal, okay? But you know, making shapes move around is still motivating for students and gets them moving, gets them activating some kinesthetics. Okay, so as a student talks about the character, they could move the character icon over here on top of it. You do have to be aware of stuff like sometimes things will go in the back, all right? And I can do order and send. Hold on, it's hard. and sent it back, sorry. Order, it's going in a different place, like that. Okay, so in that case, you want to make sure your icons are in the front, okay? Because when we are, we do bring to front for that icon, it's automatically. So do a test run, you know, on your little template, and then you're going to be able to do things like that. Okay, so as the student is given control. All right, so making your own, you know, graphic organizers is just one strategy that you can use to digitize this methodology, but you also can consider what you can do with the PDFs from MindWing, right? So PDFs are available with any manual that you already own. If you go to someplace in the first 10 pages of your manual, whether that be the Story Grammar Marker manual or the ThemeMaker manual or the Brady manual, there is information about whether there are downloadable graphic organizers that you can use. In addition, those graphic organizers are, if they're in the manual, you could scan them to become PDFs and use in a telepractice session as well. So PDFs are commonly known to not be typable, and that's true. They're meant to be more like an image. However, PDFs are annotatable, so you can annotate on top of PDFs. So when you have PDFs available, you're going to be able to type on them, depending on what machine you are using, with Adobe Reader. If you have a PC, if you have a Mac, the application called Preview works just great for this. And you can even annotate PDFs within your Google Drive, because if you have uploaded a PDF to your Google Drive, so it will live in your Google Drive, any file that you have in Google Drive, you can do an open with. So if it's a Google document, it just opens. If it's a Google slide, it just opens. All right, but if it's a PDF, when you click on it to open, you'll see that you've got the choice to open with, and there's a tool in there that's called DocHub that you can choose, and it will allow you to annotate on top of that PDF. But I'm just going to show it to you with Preview. What you see here is a really quick analysis of one episode of Amelia Bedelia. So Amelia Bedelia, who's not so much at home, it's where she's working really. At the home in which she works, Amelia Bedelia felt confused because Mrs. Rogers' list said, for example, draw the drapes. Okay, Mrs. Rogers meant close the drapes, but Amelia Bedelia literally drew the drapes by making a sketch of the drapes. So anything that you've got in terms of PDFs, and I hope that some of this is going to be transferable to other, contexts and methodologies that you might be interested in using, because lots of things have PDFs. You might be downloading PDFs from Teachers Pay Teachers or places like that. And that's something I'm going to show you later. You'll see that. Let's see. Do one of the Brady maps. And I'm actually just going to do the Brady analysis form. This one. Okay, so I'm opening this. Yes,
Before
sorry.
you get to the next part, this is
Sure, do
great.
we have questions? Yeah.
A lot of people had questions about this, about typing in and that kind of
Sure.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then just a couple of people had said, had asked about Seesaw, which is like a something that they can interact with their students on.
Yep,
and
yep.
would it be okay, and could they create worksheets in Seesaw using the icons? And I say, whatever platform right? I mean, I would assume you could.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with Seesaw, but whatever platform you're using, that's fine. And then somebody else had the question, Sean, that they're not a Google school, they're a Microsoft Office 365.
Sure. Yep. Some are.
So is what you're talking about doable?
Yep, absolutely. So I was showing how to create graphic organizers in Google Docs and in Google Slides, but then what I was talking about with those would just be transferable to doing the same in Microsoft Word and sharing your screen that has Microsoft Word loaded or PowerPoint. So it will work the exact same. The only difference is, I believe, with Microsoft 365, the sharing piece would be different. In Google Docs, you and a student could edit the document at the same time by sharing the document through Google Docs. In Microsoft, I'm not sure if that feature is available because I don't have Microsoft 365, but you can edit the same document by screen sharing and remote control. Or you could just have the student be using oral language and you are visualizing that and typing what they say. Do we think that answered those questions? Okay, so typing into a PDF. Here I'm showing you this with Mac Preview, but that is a skill that's translatable into Adobe Reader, which is free to download on any machine, and you can do that. And for both of those, they have menus that show you basically what you can do. And here in Mac Preview, one of your choices is markup, okay? So markup is the key to annotating a PDF, and you can see when I click markup that I've got a toolbar, okay? So this is what allows you to annotate. Annotating is the feature that allows you to do some analysis with the student and typing what they say or giving them the option to type along, all right? And so for here with markup, okay, I could do much the same, all right? Thinking of a story. I'll show you later, the Busy Beaver. I don't know why I picked this cutesy font, but we'll not worry about that. And so all you do is put in a little text box and you got it and it's there, you can move it around and so forth. I often like to do, even with when I'm working, I do a lot of copy and paste, because then rather than going all the way up to the top, I can do that. So we're talking about the setting and say he lives in the forest. The kickoff in this case is the beaver is very careless. And you have to just get a little comfortable with doing things like that and modifying the size of your box and moving your cursor. You get better at it as you go on. All right, and so forth. And so after this, you have a product. You could share it with the student's teacher. You could share it with the parent on how you analyze a story. You worked on the narrative elements and so forth. So annotating is something that you can do. You can do there. Let me show you something else just real quick. If I go out to my Drive.
Sean, someone just wants to know if you're using a touchpad or a mouse.
I'm using a mouse.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I don't know of folks that are using touchpads. This is mostly being done by mouse of late, which does present some challenges, but and so forth. So oh, I can actually do this with this one because we've got a setting map. So notice I'm here in Google Drive. Let me go back just so you can see where I'm at. Here in Google Drive, you can drag and drop any file into Google Drive, including the PDFs. And from here, when you double click on it, it looks like, I can't do anything with this. However, there's a tool available in Drive, or it's actually like an add-on to Drive, that's called DocHub, all right? And if you click on this little section called Open With, it'll ask, do you want to open this with Google Docs, which really can't open a PDF. But if you go to DocHub, it converts it into a format that is basically like what we saw with Adobe Reader or with Preview. Sorry, I had to give this a few permissions because I haven't given it permission in a while. And it's going to take that exact same, it already might already have some annotations on it. Yeah, because this one had some annotations. And you see you've got the same kind of toolbar. So we can take any of this, and it's even knows that that's an annotation. Okay. And you can go over here to your text and you can put this, and we can do annotation onto the setting map. All right. If you want to make it a little bit bigger, you can, and things like that. Okay. So that's annotation. And that's just another tool that you can consider. The remainder of this is going to be kind of more of just a what to, so I can tell people about these things. And I'm actually going to do this not as a presentation like that, but a little bit more zoomed in. Oops. Just so I can show people on the tabs. Oh, it doesn't want me to do that. That's okay. I'll do a couple at a time. One is, it's a little bit harder to present contexts in Telepractice because you can't necessarily just pull out a picture book. All right, you can hold a picture book up to your webcam and read a picture book. You can use a document camera, which I mentioned down here at the bottom. Document cameras are terrific for presenting a book to students, and that would be a narrative analysis context. I recently also just played around with connecting my iPhone to my Mac and opening up in QuickTime. You can do a movie recording and change the camera to the iPhone. And I directed it right down at my desk as like a makeshift document camera. So that's possible too. But one of my favorites is Epic Books for Kids. If you're not aware of Epic Books for Kids, it is like a Netflix for children's books, and they've always offered free educator accounts, actually. So before this crisis ever happened, they offered that too. And a lot of those books are expository or narrative. So you could find books that become a context for using the icons and using the, the language structures. Storyline Online is an effort by the Screen Actors Guild, and there's lots of actors reading books, picture books, and YouTube, like I mentioned, the Indiana Jones kind of video that you can find on YouTube. That's a wordless video. I also highly recommend Anna Vagan and her work because she's just a maven of using electronic media in therapy. So moving over to those, just so you can see those briefly, I just want to show you. So Epic Books for Kids looks like this, and you can read a text on screen. This is the one, this is free, and this is a story about the busy beaver who is careless, and his carelessness becomes a problem or kickoff. His dams leaked. He always made a mess of the forest. He left trees half chewed. He felled more trees than he needed, and so on. So there's tons of resources on Epic Books for Kids. This is Storyline Online. Each of these little thumbnails leads to an actor reading a picture book in a nicely produced fashion. So a lot of these are terrific books for you to use in narrative language therapy or language or narrative elaboration kind of treatment. This is Anna Vagan's website. I highly recommend taking a look at her work. This is small here, but if you click on the little YouTube link, she's got videos about how to use videos in therapy and using YouTube videos. Her Twitter is full of free information and resources. You can check that out. She just came out with a brand new product, which is inexpensive. It's called Conversation Paths. Great for telepractice because she teaches this concept of using conversation moves, like what she calls a for starter, which could be a narrative. It could be a short story to get others talking, asking questions about that, about what you said. I haven't talked a lot about expository resources today, but the same procedures apply. So you can cut and paste the topic icon and the beads or the sequencing beads, or do cause and effect with the kickoff to the wrap up. And some of the sources of that kind of work could be News ELA, which has current events based articles that you can shrink down to really readable, lower reading level versions of them so that they're not long. And readworks.org is also a terrific free resource. Not everything on News ELA is free. They have sort of a free tier. Again, it might be one that is offering more to educators during this time. ReadWorks has these article a day sets that are more contextual, like making a movie or Latin American foods or health and body or exploring continents. And so it's got a bunch of articles that are related to that topic. So I like to work in a topic flow with my students. Another thing to mention, you can get many picture books from your public library for free via Overdrive. So you need to have a library card for that library, and you can sign into Overdrive. This is Overdrive on my phone. If I clicked through to borrow Grandpa Green, which is a picture book, it would allow me to click through and download the Kindle version of that book for it's like borrowing a book from the library, right? So it's not for forever, it's like 2 weeks. And then it will be accessible. You don't need to involve a physical Kindle in this process, but there are Kindle apps for your Mac or for your PC that you can use. And by going through the process of clicking through and borrowing it, it just automatically appears in your Kindle app on your PC or your Mac. There's, someone asked a question earlier about boom cards. Just one of the things I recommend is look at resources online through this lens. Does this resource kind of tell a story? Or does this resource have a list, a sequence, a description, a compare contrast, a problem solution, and so forth? Look for those structures, and that could include boom cards. So for example, I found in boom cards this resource of a farm context boom card where you can basically create pictures of a farm. And boom cards are interactive little cards, okay? If I clicked on any of these within this boom card for this farm packet, it would have targets of these sounds because it's made for speech and language, but there's also blank templates. And the thing about boom cards is they're interactive. So you can give students cursor control, and you're in your web browser, and you could create a farm scene. And so this kind of lends itself to describing a setting, or perhaps to describing actions, like the farmer is going to milk the cow, then go off in the tractor, okay, and so forth. So you could do descriptive setting narratives, or you could do action sequence narratives, or even introduce a kickoff, perhaps, just through your imagination or from what's in there. So boom cards do have applicability to this whole process. And what you could be considering doing is, if you're creating a narrative like that, you can be switching from your boom card to your Google Slides to be talking about what's going on in the scene that you're creating, right? Interactive websites are also a possibility. So the way you can find interactive websites on any topic is to Google, say, plants, vegetables, interactive website, farm, interactive website. So Google those terms, and you can often find material like that. PBS Kids has tons of interactive activities. This one from Sid the Science Kid. I'm going to turn the sound off because it comes through a little loud. I don't want to blast your ears out. Allows you to plant different kinds of vegetables in different spaces. It also might just be affected by the internet that we're using here too. So when you look at these particular website, you'll see that this one has you follow a series of steps, like move the plant to the box, water the plant, it grows. So you could be doing sequencing You also can look at, interactive websites like iCivics. This is a much more complex sort of interactive website, and iCivics has civics-based games. I can't think of anything more important to engage kids in right now than understanding, our civic duties and the way that government works and things like that. And these are good for upper elementary students, middle school students. They also show you how long the game is to play, but you don't necessarily have to play any particular game to completion. Like, for example, this one, the responsibility launcher, lets you sort one, is this a civic responsibility or is it not? And sort them into categories. So you could be using this for list in terms of expository language, and you can check out things like that. But keep in mind that interactive websites are another piece. I'm going to be wrapping up in about 2 minutes. I just want to cover these last 2 points. Okay. So I can stay a little bit if people want to stay on, and if you've got questions, we can go through some of those for sure. Okay. So that we're not rushing. Your iPad, okay, Intella is, this is a little bit of a complicated matter because you can show things on your iPad, but you can't give interactive control to it, because whether you are, I listed on the slide some different ways to show your iPad. I have my iPad connected to my Mac via my Lightning cable, which is the charging cable. I just pulled it out of the block and put the USB in, and then QuickTime allows you to go new movie and switch it to iPad. So if you want to see the process for that, that is definitely Googleable. You can look at show iPad on Mac through QuickTime. All right, and it's very easy to do. But as I said, we can show things on screen. So apps like Toca Life or the Toca Life series, we're going back here to farm themes. I love farm themes. There's so much we can do with farms. And I'm launching Toca Life Farm. Just takes a moment to warm up and find it. These are interactive apps that let you move characters and let you move objects around the screen so that you can basically create a story. Okay. So here in Toca Life Farm, you can choose to do this with the sound on or no sound. All right, so I'm going to do it in no sound so I don't have an echo. That's a little complicated to figure out in Telepractice. I've found it better to have the sound be us talking rather than things like music. But here in the farm scene, we could have students make requests to make a story. So what should we do first? Well, maybe first we can plant blueberries, then water them. They can decide that. All right, and you can have the character pick up the blueberries, come over, and you can take the seeds and you can put them in the ground as you go through the, here we go, there we go. We planted some blueberries. All right, and now to water them, we have to find a watering can. Can you figure out where the watering can is? Oh, she has the watering can, so we'll give her the blueberries, and we'll throw them on the ground then, and go over and water where our blueberries were. Do you remember where they were? They were in the center of the patch, and now we've got blueberries, and we can eat them, and so forth. So look at the Toca Life apps for that. And it can be the verbal interaction that that makes that a therapeutic interaction. I also really love Pic Collage. Pic Collage is a free app that lets you create scenes. You basically can pick any background you want, and a photo background like a farm or like a park. And you can put pictures in and you can trim around them. If you're using a Windows machine, Pic Collage is available on Windows. So you could give interactive control to those students. Kind of the last thing I wanted to highlight is, this really isn't a shout out to my blog. I get nothing if you come to my blog, but since the beginning of this crisis, I've been blogging every day about things that people can do in Telepractice. And this one particularly relates to narrative. If you're using Zoom, you can use virtual backdrops. Like here I am in a Stop and Shop. It's a funny picture because we've got that annoying robot that they've got. If anyone's a Stop and Shop shopper and has been like almost run over by the robot, I use this for talking with students about the setting of the supermarket currently. Sarah Ward and Kristen Jacobson's STOP acronym, Space, Time, Objects, People, is like its own kind of story grammar. We're talking about how supermarkets are same but different right now than they usually are. Putting myself in a Supercuts here as a virtual background, I did just by downloading a picture of Supercuts, and I used it to introduce the narrative that I had cut my own hair on Sunday, which was terrifying, but I think it kind of worked out. It's all right, it's fine. And it generated a lot of conversation. So this also leads just to that strategy idea of using your own personal photos to spark narrative is a really good way of making connections with students. It is, goes with the evidence-based practice of conversational mapping. Give a story to get a story. If we tell our own stories, we're going to get better stories from students. It just makes a great personal connection and conversation building kind of thing. Okay, so I think I'm done with that particular amount of content because that's a lot. So hopefully people got an idea of how you can use these icons and set up your own graphic organizers. Keep it simple. Doing something like this is keeping it simple, and it can be a really great way to elicit narrative from students, and you can do the exact same thing with expository if you want to work in expository contexts. Okay.
Okay, so I know there are some questions, Sean, and I know that you are limited on time.
Yep. So people can leave if they need to, but we'll hang and I'll answer a few questions too.
Okay, I'm going to first. I'm going to let's see. So I'm going to stop your screen share.
Yep.
And I'm going to put up.
Us.
I'm going to put up this one and just get to the end. And I know that probably what people will want is to know how to get in touch with you, Sean. And we're going to definitely answer questions. And a lot of people loved your presentation, Sean. I just want to say that at the outset. So much great feedback, and people were glad to be able to just soak up all of your expertise. So what I just want to show here is just, these are the three, wait, can you see this okay? Wait, I might have, okay. So these are the quick starts that we're going to be raffling off, but if you go to our website, if you're someone who doesn't have our materials and you're looking, what can I buy? Right now, we are giving a free universal icon set with each of our 3 quick starts. So, and those universal sets are what Sean showed, and they include 104 icons, all the icons for Brady, all the icons for Storygram Marker, all the icons for ThemeMaker. It's a $19.95 value. You get them for free right now during this sort of crisis. In addition to that, you would have access to the downloadable forms that Sean mentioned quite a few times during the presentation about how to use those downloadable forms. You would be able to have access to those as well. And I'll show you just, these are the digital icons. You can see the universal set, all the ones that includes, the Brady set, the Storygram Marker set, the ThemeMaker set. And I do notice people, if somebody's only working with young children, they're only going to need Brady most likely. Most people I've noticed so far have gotten the universal set because a lot of people have, I know we have a lot of speech pathologists, reading specialists, literacy coaches, special educators who work with a range of ages on a caseload. And then we have classroom teachers and or some speech pathologists too, who may only work with a certain age group. So that's the reason why we gave a few different. So before we go further than that, I do want to say that just reiterate on the digital downloads of the icons. You know, we want you to be able to be flexible with them, but we also want you to keep in mind that we're a small family business, and Maryellen has spent 50 years perfecting what she's done here with this methodology, and Sean had mentioned that as well. We need to keep our business going, and we want to help all we can, but there is a cost to having, you know, the icons, and we have noticed people have been really gracious about that, and actually super excited. All the feedback we've gotten has been fantastic about the ability to have these icons, and at what we consider to be a pretty reasonable price. So we just ask that you use them with your students, with your clients, with your colleagues, not necessarily, you know, we don't want you making, like Sean mentioned, making things and selling them on the internet. If you are going to post them on a platform to use with your students, you know, we just ask you to make sure that it's not going out into the internet world somehow. And a couple of people did ask how to cite them. So for example, somebody mentioned that they're going to be doing Facebook Lives for their clients because that's just the best way to reach as many people as they can. That's fine. And, you know, use the icons for that, use the materials, just say where you got them, that they're Brady the Story Braider, they're Story Grammar Marker, and it's from MindWing Concepts. We just ask that if that's the situation, you would, you know, credit us with that. I'm just looking at a couple of other, okay. So I think what I'm going to do really quick is pick the winner, and then I'm going to ask Sean some of the,
yeah, I found a few that I can answer too. Yep.
Yes. Okay, Sean. Yeah, you can. So I want to show this first. Okay. So this is the link to the, for you to get your handout and your certificate of attendance. So you can go there, and then by tomorrow, you will also be able to have access to the recording, but we will be emailing you a link to the on-demand. So don't worry if you don't see it there right now, or if you don't have a chance to go to the website. We're going to send you an email tomorrow with all that information. So if you don't get a chance to take a picture of this or do a screenshot of this, don't worry, you'll get access to it. Okay, so now let me just do, I'm going to go and do, I just have a little program here that will allow me to, wait a second, where's my, oh, here. Okay. All right. So the winner, and we will, if you can raise your hand or say, hold on.
Not yet.
Okay,
after she says your name.
I know. Oh my gosh. The winner is, here we go, Linda Prince. Linda Prince. I don't know if you are on there, you hear me. You can write something in the chat or we'll contact you. Linda Prince, you are the winner. You can get whichever one you would like. And if somebody just asked how to enter the raffle, we just have a little thing on our phone that we can upload.
If you were registered, you were entered.
Right. Thank you, Sean, for articulating that for me. So Sean, can you see the question?
Yeah, just a few quick, I can stay for about 5 minutes. So I've been Zooming. Thank you all for your flexibility. I appreciate all this positive feedback I'm reading here too. It's really, anything positive right now is just fantastic. So thank you. Someone asked if I could share a treatment session, you know, start to finish. Unfortunately, that's a big ask for our parents who just allowed us to convert to Telepractice. So that's not something I'm going to be doing anytime soon. We work in private practice, so we have to kind of respect, that's not even something I want to ask folks. But someone asked about whether speech to text would work in what I've shown. And yes, you know, Mac applications have speech to text, a dictation, and in Google that's called voice typing. And voice typing is available if you're using the Chrome web browser and you go to Tools, Voice Typing. So you can experiment with that. I don't know how well it's going to work with a child coming through your speaker or they would maybe be using their speaker to go into it. Experiment. I think that things like that can work out pretty well. Someone asked about the virtual backgrounds. If you're using Zoom, that's all I can really speak to right now because it's what I'm using currently. In the lower left corner, when you're on a Zoom meeting, there's a little button that says stop video. That looks scary because you're like, oh, I'm not supposed to stop the video. But next to it is an arrow up, and it says choose a virtual background, and then it brings you right to that setting, and you can either use one of their virtual backgrounds that has you like in space, or you can put in very easily if you've got a picture you've downloaded that's on your computer, and you can find all of that. That's how I found the Stop and Shop and the Supercuts pictures, just by going to Google and downloading them. Those were very easily done by doing that. So let's just see. Trying to see what else I've got. Someone asked if iPhones and iPads are the same. It's any tablet that you connect to your computer is going to be connected either by AirPlay or via a web connection, and it will be manipulable by you, but not by the student. So that goes for iPhones and iPads. But I think there's still great visuals that are on there that you can use that can be talked through and can be used to make up a story or make up an informational thing. Was there anything else I'm trying to find? I'm seeing a lot of just positive. Thank you. You're welcome.
I see a question about does anyone use this in Spanish and can share how they share that with parents. We do have Spanish maps. If you go to our website, you can search Spanish maps, and there is a letter to parents right in there. There's a letter to parents in there, so that might be helpful for you. Sandra, I think, was the one who asked that.
And also just, the icons are pretty much language neutral. So, putting them on screen as a visual support could be used to elicit a narrative in Spanish.
I was just trying to see if there was any other questions that I thought people,
there was a question about writing programs.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't know if there was another question for Sean. Wait a minute. There was,
Someone asked, how do you give students cursor control? And that is dependent on what platform you're using, if that's even available. Zoom does have it available, but the student will do best if they are on a laptop or a desktop, a full laptop or desktop. You can't give cursor control if the student's using a Chromebook. You can give cursor control if they're using an iPad, but it's pretty limited in what you can do. Like they could click on that. So it's best if they do that. And I know it's available in Zoom. I don't know where else it's available. I know it's not available in Google Meet. So it depends on what platform you're using.
Sean, also a few people asked during it about DocHub. That it prompted them to pay. So I don't know.
I haven't had that experience.
No, and then a couple of people, I think you may have just answered that while I was looking for other questions, but just about, do any of these allow the students to type in and then the students to type onto it as well?
Well, sure. Let's say, for example, if you were in Google Docs, you've made your little template. You can type. You can then either give cursor control if that's available, the student can type. All right, or you can share the document with the student's Google account. The student receives it, it's editable by them, they can type. So some of that takes a little bit of teaching, but that's a good opportunity to teach following directions in a functional context as well.
Right. Yeah, and then somebody said, how about Chrome versus Safari?
It doesn't, Google apps will perform best in Chrome. And the voice typing is only available in Chrome. But other than that, I find that they're pretty much interchangeable. So that's a good question. But
Okay, I'm trying to think if there was any, oh, people wanted to know if you could type into the chat the references that you made to the organizations in Maine that are kind of forerunners in this.
Sure. I don't know that they have any necessarily PD sessions scheduled, but it's Waldo County General Hospital in Belfast, Maine. Their website does have some information about their telepractice program and training. So I just did type that there. Yeah. My blog is www.speechtechie.com. Someone just asked that.
Oh, you know what, I meant to put that I had a slide at the end. You know, there will be a slide at the end for how to get a hold of Sean and Maryellen. And so when we email you, or if you click on that link that we gave a few minutes ago, which I'll put in here in the chat, you should be able to get actually, I'll show you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sheila. Someone asked about annotation.
Yeah.
I don't know. Someone asked if Google Teams has annotation, and it's Microsoft Teams, and I don't know. I'm sorry. I haven't used that product. But someone asked about annotation with Epic books for kids. And yes, theoretically, if you're showing an Epic book, you should be able to also annotate on the website if you want. I find with annotation with Zoom that I kind of don't know what the hell's going on with it. Like, it sometimes is available and sometimes isn't. And I think it depends on who you are sharing with. I haven't figured that all out yet. So this is pretty new to me too.
Yeah, I haven't. And I think it's great to, everyone really appreciated, Sean, seeing you do this in real time and just and I think probably people would like to see even more. So maybe we'll be able to set something else up, because
Sure.
I think for there's some places that are going to be transitioning to this that are just doing it temporarily because of the situation. And there's and I think you and I have talked for the past 2 years just about the growing nature of telepractice and teletherapy, and just that, Sean, you've been like the forerunner in telling us that we need to to get on that bandwagon.
Thanks.
So thank you for all that. And I know
Thank you guys.
I know you've got another meeting at 4, so I don't want to have you overstay, but Maryellen and I will stay for a couple more minutes if there's any other questions. And thank you, Sean, so much.
Thanks everyone for attending, and I hope it was helpful. Thank you for asking me. All right, thank you. See you.
It was wonderful. Thanks,
Everyone stay healthy.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye.